Windsurfing has become a major sport worldwide in about the last 10 years. It began in Hawaii when the surfers wanted some extra novelty and they decided to put a sail on their surfboards. So basically windsurfing is a short board, maybe 2 to 3 meters in length, with a sail attached. It's a one-man sport, unlike dinghy sailing. Only one person at a time normally goes on windsurfers. I think it's become popular because a lot of youngsters can afford the equipment, and it's easy to sail from home as long as you have water nearby. You can take the equipment on the top of a car, in a truck, a tempo, whatever. To learn windsurfing, you need about 1 or 2 hours practice on fairly calm water to get the basics mastered. In sailing, you can sail in every direction except straight into the wind. So on a bay like this, where the wind is coming onshore, to sail out, we zigzag at 45 degrees to the wind. This is called tacking. When we want to come home with the wind coming inshore, we can turn round and the wind blows us home. This is called running. So this sport now throughout the world, including Southeast Asia and India, is becoming one of the major water sports. It's extremely good for all-round fitness. You will see from the shots you have taken that it develops good muscular strength for the legs and for the arms. And some people say when you practice it for 20 to 30 minutes, it also has an aerobic effect. It helps make the heart and the lungs fit too. It certainly produces a lot of flexibility. There's all this bending around and stretching and jumping about the place. I think apart from that, like any sport, it also helps you to relax. It gets rid of a lot of stress and tension, which we're used to in city life. Once you've mastered some of the basic sailing techniques of windsurfing, you can begin to perform what is called freestyle. This involves various tricks of sailing the board on its side, even sailing the board backwards, flipping the sail in different directions. Normally one can begin to work on that after maybe 20 to 30 hours of sailing. So you can see two basic areas of development in windsurfing. You learn the basic techniques to sail. We can sail at all positions relative to the wind. And then later on we can learn tricks and stunts, which it's a bit like gymnastics whilst on the windsurfer, jumping about. I first learned windsurfing about 5 or 6 years ago, in my mid-30s. This is one interesting thing about windsurfing. Anyone can do it. Young girls have learned it, old ladies have learned it, young men and old men like myself have learned it. It takes a few hours to master the basics. Once we've got over the basics, you can start getting into tricks and stunts, or what's called freestyle.
What is freestyle?
Freestyle is where you sail the board backwards, you sail the board on its side, you do special kinds of jibings, twisting the sail through the wind in different ways.
How do you sail back? How do you use the wind to do all this that you have just said?
We use the wind hoping that it is constant. It's a question of learning how to maneuver the sail relative to the wind that enables you to practice the tricks.
Yeah, can you say more things about that?
Yes, certainly. Initially, normally you learn just to sail along in a straight line, and you're holding the thing and you're going straight down a certain line relative to the wind. This is the first step of learning. Then as you get practice, and I should point out practice means falling off a lot. There's a lot of tumbling in there. Practice means falling off a lot. You learn to sail at varying positions to the wind. And eventually you learn how to get the sail in such a position that you can even go backwards. So this is like acrobatics or any other athletic skill. With a considerable amount of practice you can get into those kind of stunts. I think it's fair to say the majority of windsurfers enjoy just sailing along in straight lines or up and down a bay or in and out of a beach. But every man chooses what he likes. Man's a competitive creature. No sooner has he invented something than he wants to test his abilities against other men. In racing, for sailing and for windsurfing, the practice is very similar. We lay out a triangular course in a bay. So 3 points to be sailed round. The course is laid in such a way that it tests a man's ability to sail at every direction relative to the wind. Earlier we were saying if the wind's coming straight on shore, you can't sail into it. You have to zigzag. So some legs of the race, one has to zigzag. This is called close hauled or tacking. other legs of the race, the wind will be coming straight over the side of the boat. This is called reaching, and is usually a very fast way of sailing. And the final leg of the race will usually be what is called running, where the wind is coming from behind you. This is a fairly slow way of sailing, but demands a lot of skill. Racing in India is a relatively new thing, in windsurfing particularly. We have had, though, some outstanding dinghy sailors in India for a number of years. The Umwalla brothers are a classic example here. Windsurfer racing has only been active for maybe 3 or 4 years in India, the primary racing centers being in Goa and in Bombay. And in fact, just recently the Commonwealth Regatta has concluded in Bombay, with Indian participants taking creditable positions there. Racing in most parts of the world is according to Olympic standards, and points are scored. The winner of any race scores the lowest points, actually 0 points. And then every position, second point, has a certain number of penalty points against it. Third place has a certain number of penalty points, and so on. Now, in a regatta, this means there's a series of races. So over the series of races, the cumulative penalty points accrued in each race is added on for the particular sailors. At the end of the race, at the end of the regatta, the man who wins the regatta is the one with the lowest number of penalty points. So on that basis. As such, a regatta tests a sailor possibly over a number of days in a number of different wind and sea conditions. So it becomes a very exacting test of his skill and his athleticism. The major sport of the last decade. It grew out of surfing. In surfing, we have a simple board, maybe 2 meters in length, which you stand on, and you use the power of the wave as a motive force in surfing. The surfers in Hawaii about 10-15 years ago were getting bored just with surfing and decided to put a sail up onto the board. The windsurf board it became. The windsurfer then is a board of about 2 to 3 meters length, usually made of fiberglass or a particular type of plastic. There's a sail which is 2 to 3 meters high above you, and you have to hold the sail up. Windsurfing is definitely a one-man sport. There's only one person at a time goes on most windsurfers. It demands a fairly high level of athleticism. However, young people, old people, ladies and gents alike have all learned windsurfing all over the world. It's different from dinghy sailing. In dinghy sailing, normally we can get 2 men into a dinghy, a helmsman and a crew. That's like a driver and his assistant. In dinghy sailing, the classes that are well known in India are the Enterprise class. This is basically an old class from England, which has been raced now for about 20 years there, and is the national class in India. More recently in India, the laser dinghy has been introduced. This again can be a 1-man or a 2-man dinghy and is exceptionally fast, a very exciting dinghy to handle. But the major difference in sailing will be between windsurfing and dinghy sailing as a whole. Windsurfing being 1 man, dinghy sailing 2 people.